Emily, can you tell us about your suspicions and the evidence you found? The prosecutor asked, his voice calm and steady. I took a deep breath and began. I started noticing strange symptoms after moving in with James. His mother's health declined rapidly, and she had unexplained bruises. I found similar symptoms in myself later on. What did you find in your investigation? He prompted. I hired a private detective who discovered that Linda was in severe financial trouble. We found evidence that she had poisoned her husband and was likely trying to do the same to me and James for financial gain. I explained, my voice trembling. Did Linda ever say anything to you that indicated her guilt? The prosecutor asked. Yes, just before I lost consciousness, she told me it was over for me, and that after I died, James would be next. She wanted everything we had, I said, my voice breaking with emotion. The defense lawyer stood up to cross-examine me, trying to cast doubt on my testimony. Emily, isn't it true that you and Linda never got along? Couldn't this be a personal vendetta? No, this isn't personal. This is about stopping a killer, I said firmly, refusing to be intimidated. As the trial went on, more witnesses testified, and the evidence piled up against Linda. The private detective presented his findings, and the medical examiner confirmed the presence of Warren in the exhumed bodies. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. When Linda was called to the stand, she initially denied everything, but the weight of the evidence was too much. Under pressure, she finally broke down and confessed. In the next court hearing, Linda looked at James with a mocking smile. Yes, I did it. I poisoned my husband, our mother, and I tried to poison you and Emily. I wanted it all, the money, the property. And look at you now, crying like a baby. James's face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks as he heard her words. Linda, how could you? She laughed, a cold, cynical sound that sent chills down my spine. You were always so gullible, James. You never saw what was right in front of you. The judge's gavel banged, calling for order in the court. Linda was convicted of double premeditated murder and the attempted murder of me and James. She was sentenced to a long prison term, her mocking smile fading as she was led away in handcuffs. After the trial, I made the hard decision to divorce James. There was just too much pain and betrayal to mend. I went through treatment to recover from the poisoning, and I heard through friends that James was also undergoing treatment because Linda had tried to poison him too. I was in my new apartment, trying to rebuild my life. It was small but cozy, a fresh start away from all the chaos. I focused on getting healthy and finding some peace. One afternoon, I was having coffee with my friend Sarah, who had been my rock through all of this. So how are you really doing, Emily? Sarah asked, looking at me with concern. I'm getting there, one day at a time. It's been rough, but I'm trying to move on, I replied, sipping my coffee. Have you heard from James? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, he's tried a few times to patch things up, I said, rolling my eyes. But I told him it's over. Good for you. After everything he put you through, you deserve better, she said, nodding in approval. I just can never get past the way he always sided with Linda over me. You can say all of your vows, but trust is the thing that counts in marriage. And when it's gone, you might as well leave, I said, feeling a twinge of pain. You're right. You need someone who has faith in you and never leaves your side, she said with a tight hand squeeze. I don't know, maybe it was just one of those days that I felt like going through some old photos and deciding what to keep, what to get rid of. They each reminded me of something, be it good or terrible. All that was heavily broken up with pings from my phone of messages smacking into us from James. It took me a little bit, but I finally did. Emily, I know how much pain I'd have caused you. Just one more conversation, please. The message read, I decided to be blunt with him instead. James, there's nothing more we can do or say. We both need to move on. Good luck to you, but I am done with this chapter. I hit send and experienced a weird mix of relief and it being over. Chapter IV slammed the door on story of my life. At night I began to paint, finding a place of refuge and expression. This was good for me. It keeps my emotions grounded. I even signed up for a local book club and finally made several new friends. Each and every day became a moment toward recovery, as well as I was on a mission to develop a life of trust fund, happiness, and tranquility. It was part of my past and would always be with me, but the future had not been decided. Ready to take on whatever was coming my way, but this time I would be stronger, wiser. Ah, Sandra, they mean well. You know, they're just. Billy scratched his head. I'll talk to them. They'll chill out. Back in the kitchen, it felt like the final round of a cook-off where I was the only contestant, and the judges were out for blood. So Sandra, when's dinner? Billy must be starving, Lauren said, glancing at me like I was the help. Whenever the chili decides it's ready, I replied, but I kept my voice light. It's a tricky situation. Dinner landed on the table, and I scanned their faces. Mrs. Cherry stirred her food around, inspecting every bean like it held the secret to the universe. A bit different from how I make it, Mrs. Cherry finally said, "That's code for nice try, but you're no match for me." Billy dived in though, bless him. "Babe, this is awesome, right, ma?" Lauren muttered, sure, and Mrs. Cherry just shrugged like she was agreeing with the worst food critic. After they left, Billy was slapping his belly, saying, "It's all good." I watched the door shut behind them, feeling tiny, like I'm losing at a game I didn't sign up to play. The next time they popped over, it was the same old tune, like nothing had changed. I must have been dreaming to think a few words from Billy might turn the tide. Still, I asked him to talk to his mother about boundaries. I thought getting married was the hard part. Fitting into Billy's family is the real challenge. They've got their own idea of family, and I'm not in it yet. If this is what married life is like, count me out of the honeymoon phase. It was one of those days where the clock seemed to tick slower than syrup drips from a bottle. That's when my phone decided to ring. Glancing at the caller ID, my heart sank. It was Mrs. Cherry again. Sandra, her voice was stern, and it did nothing for my headache. You think you can just snatch Billy away from us? Her words stung like vinegar on a paper cut. I glanced over at Billy, hoping he'd at least flinch at his mother's tone. Nothing. He was glued to the TV screen, a statue with a heartbeat. Mrs. Cherry, it's not like that. We're just trying to set up some boundaries, I said, my voice thin. Boundaries, she fumed. That's just a fancy word for shutting us out. You can't do that to us. To me, he's my son. I blinked back frustration. Billy was still silent, looking like someone shrunk his spine in the wash. Listen, it's normal for married folks to want their own space. I tried to keep the edge out of my tone. Space? He's never needed space before you came, she retorted sharply. Each word chipped away at my patience. That's when Billy decided to speak up, but not to back me up. No, Mom, everything's okay. Sophia's not. She's not being unreasonable, I guess, he said, but his voice was like wet cardboard. Billy, I just can't believe this. First Lauren tells me Sandra is making a fuss over our visits, and now this. Mrs. Cherry sounded hurt, and Billy jumped on that. Lauren said that. Billy turned to me, eyebrows raised as if I was the one causing trouble. Yeah, she did, and I think she's right. Family is family. Billy, you can't just turn your back on us. She pressed harder, knowing she was pulling him in. I saw my husband, the man I loved, deflate like a balloon 3 days after a party. The call ended with promises of another family meeting that felt more like a summit to discuss the terms of my surrender. After the call, it was as if nothing had happened. Billy settled back on the couch, resuming his championship in channel surfing. Mrs. Cherry continued her visits, each one a masterclass in thinly veiled jabs, and Lauren might as well have been a puppet master, always getting Billy's ear whenever she pleased. When word got back to me that Lauren was bad-mouthing me all over town, my blood boiled for a second, but I didn't let it get the best of me. I knew I had to handle this the right way. I waited for the right moment to deal with Lauren directly, and that moment came sooner than I thought. I found Lauren at the market on a Sunday morning, filling her basket with groceries. She didn't see me at first, but I walked right up to her, steady and strong. "Lauren," I said. She looked up and rolled her eyes. "What do you want, Sandra?" "We need to talk. It's about the stories you've been spreading." She snorted loudly, a smirk spreading across her face. "Stories? I don't know what you're talking about." "The rumors, Lauren. About me. Teresa's bossy, Teresa's this and that. Cut it out." She laughed, tossing an apple up and down in her hand. "And what are you going to do if I don't? You think you can boss me around?" I kept my cool. "Listen, spreading lies isn't just mean. It's slander, and I won't stand for it." Lauren laughed again, louder this time. "You're going to sue me? Get real, Sandra. You haven't got the stomach for that. People's reputations are at stake." "I'm serious, Lauren. Keep it up, and yes, I will take legal action if I need to." The arrogance just poured off her as she leaned in close. "You're in way over your head, little Miss City Lawyer. Going to take me to court. This isn't a joke. Lauren, I'm giving you a chance to stop this nonsense before it gets serious." She shoved her face closer to mine, a challenge plain in her expression. "Bring it on, Sandra. Do your worst." With that, she spun on her heel, almost knocking over a display of canned beans, and left me standing there. Her laughter echoed through the aisle long after she was gone. I walked back home slower than usual, thinking everything over. Later that day, when my husband came back, I told him what happened. He was in the middle of taking his boots off and froze, one boot off, the other still on. "You did what now?" he asked. I told Lauren off. I threatened her with legal action if she doesn't stop spreading rumors. His face went red, then white. "You couldn't just let it go. Why did you have to stir the pot, Sandra?" I straightened up. "Because it's not right, and I won't be walked over. Not by her, not by anyone." We were silent for a while, both lost in our thoughts. It was clear this was more than a little family squabble. It was a line drawn in the sand, and I had to stand my ground. He just stood there with that same lost puppy look that's becoming permanent on his face. I threw myself onto the couch, fuming. The fight might calm down for now, but Lauren is the kind of weed that keeps sprouting up. No telling when she'll start yapping again, and Billy. God knows if he'll ever find the guts to stand up to them. Right now, I just need to cool off and figure out my next move in this messy game they're all too eager to play. The whole mess with Lauren had me weighing my options like a pros and cons list in my head. I signed up for a life with Billy, not a daily soap opera with his family. With things going from bad to worse, the word divorce started rattling around in my brain. My thoughts changed in a dryer. Then, as if on cue, Mrs. Cherry, the town's self-appointed gossip queen and Lauren's godmother, called me up. "Sandra, dear," she chirped like a bird that spotted a worm. "We're throwing a little party for Lauren's engagement. It's happening at the Jen's next week. We'd love to see you there." The tone of her voice was all fake niceness, the kind that practically screams, "I dare you to show up." After hanging up, I stared at the silent phone, thinking how this invite smelled like a setup. Billy was already on edge, and now this. I couldn't help but blurt out to him, "Guess who's got plans for us next week?" He was sitting at the kitchen table, his forehead creased like he was trying to iron out a thought. "Who's scheming now?" "Your sister's engagement party," I said. I said it straight out. "We're invited, courtesy of Mrs. Cherry." Billy's face went a shade paler, the crease steepening. "Oh hell, yeah, oh hell sounds about right." "So what's the plan here, Billy? Are we going to roll over and play nice, or what?" He was quiet for too long, and I'm not having it. "Come on, spit it out." Billy finally looked up, his eyes serious. "Sandra, it's family. I think we should go." I crossed my arms, feeling the heat rise up my neck. "And let Lauren have a field day. I'm not their punching bag." He threw his hands up a bit too dramatically. "What do you want me to say?" "That's my sister." I leaned in, my hands flat on the table. "And I'm your wife." Does that not count for much these days? The word divorce was right there on the tip of my tongue, but I bit it back hard. Billy ran his hand through his hair, making it stand up like he'd just had an electric shock. "Of course it counts. Look, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place here. I'm a heartbeat away from losing my cool." "Well, guess what, sweetheart? So am I. I married you, not your constant need to please your family at my expense." Billy stood up, walked over, and took my hands. They felt rough, all work and worry. "Sandra, I love you." "I do. And I hate that it's come to this. Let's not go to the party. You and me, we're a team, right?" It struck me then that this was the first time in a long while he picked me over them without flinching. It felt like finding an oasis in the middle of the desert. That night, the thought of divorce quietly tucked itself away. Not gone, but sleeping like a dog with one eye always open. But it was enough for me to catch my breath, to maybe believe that we could find some solid ground again. The place was hopping when we showed up, walls throbbing with too loud laughter and clinking glasses. I spotted Mrs. Cherry right away, sitting queen bee style at the biggest table, with that "I rule the world" look. There was Billy's sister Lauren, all grins like she won the lottery, and her guy Andrew, a deer-in-headlights type trying to smile. His folks were with them too, stiff and awkward, like they wandered into the wrong movie theater. Mrs. Cherry zeroed in on me the second we stepped in. "Sandra," she used like I was a 6-year-old not playing nice. "You'll be taking care of the bill tonight, right? To show you're one of us." I nearly spit out my drink. "What? Why me?" The table's all ears now, and the air's thick with that, "Oh, this is going to be good" vibe. Mrs. Cherry stretched her smile. "Tradition, sweetheart. The newest family member always shows their commitment." My jaw clamped shut so fast, I'm surprised I didn't chip a tooth. Commitment. That sounds a whole lot like a shakedown. Everyone perked up like they're hearing a whistle. There she goes, Mrs. Cherry, puffing up like I slapped her. "Excuse me, that's uncalled for." Billy leaned in, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Just do it, Sandra. It's not a big deal." "A big deal." I whispered back, my voice turning into a snarl. "No thanks. I ain't no one's piggy bank." He's hissing now, real quiet but clear. "Pay the damn bill, Sandra, or we're through." I mean it. My laugh is as sharp as a snapped wire. "You're not serious." He's all stone-faced and tight-mouthed. "You think I'm playing." I stare him down. "Divorce over this." He's all "family first, Sandra." I'm shaking my head. And where do I fit, huh? It's showtime, and even Andrew and his parents are watching, their faces screaming, "What the hell's going on?" I push back my chair and stand, letting them all hear me. "No, I ain't doing this dance," I say, my voice like a hammer on steel. There's shock on their faces, some whispering, some wide-eyed. Billy's going red, white, red like a stoplight, losing its mind. Mrs. Cherry looks like she might choke. I walk out into the night. It's black and cool and smells like freedom. I hear the door slam behind me. My heart's racing, but it's Billy who threw the divorce word, not me. The bar was nothing special, just another hole in the wall with dim lights and the smell of old beer. I had barely settled with a glass of something strong when my phone rang. It was Billy, and for a moment, I considered not answering, but I did. "Sandra, listen, I'm sorry." I didn't mean to say divorce. Billy's voice was rushed and apologetic. Before I could even think of a response, Lauren's voice blasted through. "You've ruined my engagement dinner, you selfish." The phone must have changed hands so fast my head spun. I could practically hear the venom in her voice. In the background, I heard Mrs. Jerry loud and clear. "Why should I pay? He's your son. You pay the bill. I won't have my daughter marrying into a family that doesn't know how to treat people." The chaos from JPA's was spilling through the phone like a bad sitcom without a laugh track. People were arguing, and it seemed like nobody was keen on picking up the tab. I pushed away from the bar, my anger giving me a clear, calm voice. "Lauren, chill out. Your mom's the one making a scene, not me." "Sandra, hang up," Billy said, his voice a faint whisper behind his sister's ranting. "No, she needs tow," Lauren kept going, but I wasn't about to play this game. I ended the call. The screen showed a string of missed calls and texts that I swiped away. They were probably all about the same thing, guilt and blame, the usual. I looked at the bartender. "Another one, please." He nodded, pouring another shot without a word. Silence settled around me, except for the low murmur from the regulars scattered around. I tried to collect my thoughts. My phone screen lit up again, showing Billy's name. The guy just didn't know when to quit. I flipped the phone face down, letting it go to voicemail. It was futile to talk when the whole crew was going off the rails back there. A few drinks later, the door to the bar crept open, and in came a chill gust of evening air. But I didn't look up. It didn't matter who was coming and going. I thought about what had just happened and what it all meant. Here I was, sitting in a bar because my in-laws decided I was the bank, and instead of understanding, my supposed partner turned it into an ultimatum. I finally picked up my phone and typed out a text. "Billy, we're done. Lauren can think what she wants, and your mom can deal with her own damn bills. I will not be part of this circus anymore." Just as I hit send, the phone rang again. This time, I shut it off. I was tired of the arguing, the demands, and above all, tired of feeling like I was alone in a partnership that was supposed to have my back. When the room finally stopped spinning and my head felt a little clearer, I knew what had to happen next. It was time to start looking forward, even if I had to do it on my own. No more games. No more being the scapegoat for a family that couldn't see past their own drama. I walked out of the bar, leaving the noise and the night behind. The air was getting colder, and the city lights were starting to blur into the coming darkness. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it was mine to take. What a mess that last evening was. The whole thing at the restaurant blew up bigger than anyone thought. The groom had had it up to here with the drama and ditched the engagement right then and there. You should have seen Lauren's face when he dropped that bomb. I can't believe it. No one saw it coming, least of all her. Then the mother-in-law lost it, screaming like a banshee. She was causing such a scene that the groom's family looked ready to call 911. She was yelling about disrespect and no consideration. It was pure chaos, like one of those trashy daytime shows where chairs start flying. Meanwhile, I was done. I filed for divorce and cut off all contact. I ignored Billy's calls and deleted his messages. The last I heard, he, his sister, and my former mother-in-law from hell are all holed up in the same house, probably driving each other crazy. As for me, it felt like I finally stopped holding my breath after years underwater. Life's simpler now, but that evening is still the talk whenever I bump into people from the old circle. It gets old, you know. So here's the update for anyone who still cares. I'm living my best, most peaceful life. I'm sitting in my usual spot at the cafe down the street from my place, the one where the coffee is strong, and no one asks too many questions. The barista gives me a nod, the usual he asks, like he's asking if the sky is up. Yep, I say. But those are my days, without the real lit and no pesky in-laws. When work is just work, it makes life a lot easier. I am entitled to my own free time and pleasures without pouting or whining. I collapse onto my saggy, thrice refurbished couch. The springs are gone, but I fit perfectly in it. I turn on the TV, and it's a crime show that catches criminals. I find it binding. By minute 30, the peace is what does me in. Not creepiness or loneliness, just peace. Breathe in, breathe out. No more eggshells to walk on, and no more fights to mediate between family members. This is living. Every night by the time I reach my pillow, it's with relief. No pat on the back needed. I know my value now, and I am starting to act accordingly. I take a bite of my sandwich when my phone buzzes. A text message from an unknown number. All I can guess is it's Billy seeing his way to text through a third party. I didn't even read it, so I deleted it. Not today, Satan. Not ever. I remember they used to say I would regret this, but nope. No regrets today, folks. The day stretches warm and slow, concluding with a glass of something smooth and an overdue book. A hard but fair heroine, all right. She kind of reminds me of someone equally as unsentimental.